Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Fusion deck user in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly at the end of the story. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reincarnated in Marvel as a gamer? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 51, The First Exchange. Is this captain level? Why does it feel so weak? Yeah, these cherry blossoms are beautiful, but useless, right? The 6th division is the noble division. Is this the legendary rich second generation captain? Only status and power, no real strength? Because they didn't know Byakuya's strength was limited, many people questioned his power. But the next moment, all those who doubted were proven wrong. Still has some brute strength. Looking at Ichigo's performance, Byakuya's expression darkened slightly. As a captain, even with suppressed strength, he should quickly deal with Ichigo. But now, it was clearly dragging on. Thus, Byakuya, who had been quiet and reserved since arriving, with few movements and words, finally moved into action. He raised the hilt of Senbonzakura towards Ichigo, directing the cherry blossom petals from a distance. Instantly, with Byakuya's direct control, the Senbonzakura petal swarm became energized as if given a shot of adrenaline. The Senbonzakura petal swarm quickly regrouped. Then, the Senbonzakura petals gathered into a fist shape and surged towards Ichigo. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo released the Getsuga Tensho from his hand. The blue crescent collided with the pink cherry blossom swarm. But this time, the cherry blossom swarm was no longer as weak as before. Even though dispersed by the Getsuga Tensho, a few cherry blossoms broke through and grazed Ichigo's cheeks, arms, shoulders, and other areas. Instantly, blood spurted from multiple wounds on Ichigo's body, as if he had been cut by blades. Still couldn't block it all? Looking at his injuries, Ichigo muttered to himself. What happened? Wasn't he just grazed by petals? Why is he bleeding? Watching this scene, the bullet comments completely didn't understand how Ichigo got injured. Then, Byakuya began to explain. My Zanpakuto can disassemble the blade into 1,000 invisible tiny blades. Under the light, they appear like dancing petals, hence the name Senbonzakura. T/N, Senbonzakura means 1,000 cherry blossoms. You are very perceptive. You detected the hidden lethality beneath Senbonzakura's gorgeous appearance from the start. But, give up. Your Zanpakuto's ability seems very one-dimensional. You cannot defend against the all-pervasive Senbonzakura. Under Byakuya's explanation, the bullet comments understood. So, every petal is a blade. Holy crap, such a cool ability. I have a feeling this Kachiki Byakuya is going to be super popular on Earth. Because the Bleach world Ichigo was in was so dazzling and enchanting, not only the players but also many people in the Soul Society had gained a large number of fans due to their unique charm. Byakuya was no exception. Just from his first appearance, countless people had taken a liking to him. Strictly speaking, even Ichigo in the field was a fan of Byakuya, wasn't he? I know that, of course. Wiping the blood from his face, Ichigo gripped Zangetsu again. His eyes showed no change despite Byakuya's cool and powerful ability. Your Senbonzakura is indeed strong, but my Zangetsu isn't bad either. Although it's not as versatile as your Senbonzakura, Zangetsu's hardness, sharpness, and even the power of its soul skill, Getsuga Tensho, are top-notch. If a few of your petals slip through occasionally, they can't cause fatal injuries. But if I land a slash on you, that might not be the case. Ichigo said. I see. You have a very pure, direct attack type Zanpakuto. Byakuya understood. If it weren't me who came today, but that guy Saraki Kenpachi, he would probably like you very much. Unfortunately, you encountered me. Saying this, Byakuya swung the hilt again. After being dispersed once by Ichigo, the Senbonzakura petals gathered again, hovering before Byakuya, ready to assault at any moment. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu, preparing to counter Byakuya's next attack. However, this time, having learned from the previous attack, Byakuya knew that under direct assault, he couldn't break through Ichigo's door-sized Zangetsu. So, Bokuto number 61, Rikujikoro. Senbonzakura Assault. While casting the Kido without incantation, he simultaneously controlled Senbonzakura to attack. The result of this split focus was that Ichigo was directly rendered immobile, at the mercy of others. Ahead, following closely behind the golden light of Rikujikoro, the Senbonzakura blade swarm capable of slicing someone 1,000 times was about to arrive. Fortunately, Ichigo had also prepared for this. With Byakuya's ability, he couldn't instantly break free from Rikujikoro, so... Chapter 52 Utsasimi. Under the astonished gazes of Byakuya and Renji nearby, the trapped Ichigo raised his left hand. From the wide sleeve of his shihakusho, a quincy cross was flung out, and Ryuryoku was channeled into it. A brilliant spirit bow instantly took form. Ichigo, a Shinigami, was actually using a quincy's bow. Quincy? Seeing this, even someone as cold as Byakuya couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. But by then, Ichigo had already drawn the bow like a full moon. A fresh Getsuga Tensho was loaded into the spirit bow formed by the quincy cross, coated with a Heilig file. Terrifying Ryatsu shook the air. It felt like being targeted by a Minos Grande's Siro. Byakuya felt a tingle on his scalp. The next moment, Ichigo released his grip. Getsuya, go. The Getsuga Tensho, transformed into a beam of light, shot forth, shattering the Senbonzakura petal swarm about to reach Ichigo's face, and continued unabated towards Byakuya. Watching the arrow flying towards him, Byakuya had to pause his control of Senbonzakura and focus on defense. He thrust his hand forward. Bokuto number 81, Danku. A transparent air wall suddenly appeared, blocking Ichigo's Getsuya. High-density erasure spread and exploded against the hard Danku. Intense white light flashed, forcing all spectators to instinctively turn their heads away. But when they turned back, they found that Ichigo, who had just been bound by Rikujikoro, had vanished. Could it be? Rukia quickly turned her head, looking towards Byakuya's side. And just as she predicted. The next second, Ichigo instantly appeared behind Byakuya, swinging his blade down. Seeing this, the prepared Byakuya turned, rotating the hilt towards Ichigo. The petal swarm, which had started returning after being dispersed by the Getsuya, quickly rushed back to defend, filling the gap left by the blade being turned into 1,000 cherry blossoms. This situation, where the master was left without a sword, was a disadvantage. With Byakuya's ample combat experience, the preemptively aimed Senbonzakura accurately struck Ichigo. However, even though he hit Ichigo, Byakuya's eyes widened as he looked at the Ichigo he had struck. Because, after the cherry blossom petals passed through, the struck Ichigo dissipated like a bubble. It was an afterimage left by Ichigo from his high-speed movement. Just like in the fight against Renji, Ichigo used the agility of Hirenkyaku to shift to Byakuya's other side again. The real Zangetsu, imbued with Getsuga Tensho, came down. Rumble. A hemispherical burst of spiritual particles exploded. The ground was blasted into a huge crater by this strike, even revealing the pipes underground. Watching this scene, everyone was extremely tense. Did he succeed? Someone in the bullet comments asked. But obviously, a proper captain couldn't be taken down by Ichigo so easily. TCH. Looking at the large crater created by the Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo clicked his tongue quietly and turned to look to the side. There, Byakuya, clad in his captain's Haori, said faintly, Way of Onmitsu, third of the Shiho, Utsusimi. After several rounds of maneuvering, the Getsuga Tensho successfully struck Byakuya's scarf. After this round of maneuvering, Byakuya also figured out what Ichigo's ability just now was. I see. A Shinigami's Shuunpa is relatively cumbersome. It can only move quickly forward or backward, and requires a certain time to overcome inertia after stopping. But the Quincy's Hirenkyaku is different. Its principle is to use the flow of Reisher to propel the person forward. It's faster and more agile than an ordinary Shinigami's Shuunpa. You deliberately used the clumsy Shuunpa to reach my left rear, just to make me overlook your subsequent Hirenkyaku. Indeed, a very clever tactic. Most people wouldn't expect a Shinigami to be able to use a Quincy's Hirenkyaku. Unfortunately, because my Zanpakuto's ability is to break down into thousands of tiny blades, I am left defenseless and vulnerable when facing sudden advances from others. Therefore, since childhood, my father had me train with the goddess of flash, Shihoin Yoruchi, which is how I learned this special step for self-preservation in such situations. This round, your loss is not unjust. Byakuya commented in a calm tone. Hearing his explanation, the bullet comments also felt very frustrated. He originally had a weakness, but that weakness was compensated for by power and status. Powerful, wealthy, and very talented. My God, is there any room for ordinary people to live? Yeah, these people who already have good family conditions and still work hard are the most frustrating. Ichigo's limited repertoire are about to be used up. What should he do next? The audience, having watched until now, was very worried. Chapter 53 Bankai, Senbunzakura Kageyoshi. Others are formally trained, proficient in Zanjutsu, Hakuta, Ho-Oh, and Kido. But Ichigo is self-taught, only knowing his limited set of moves. If those 3 moves don't work, he faces a bitter fight. The problem is, Byakuya has only shown his Shurkai and some Kido so far, and hasn't revealed anything else. Simultaneously, Byakuya also asked, So, will you surrender? By now, you should be very clear about the difference in strength between us. Without Bankai, you cannot defeat me. Ending this battle here wouldn't be a bad outcome. However, Ichigo scoffed at Byakuya's advice. Ichigo asked, Are you bleeding? Ha? Hearing this, Byakuya was taken aback. Ignoring him, Ichigo continued, You're not bleeding, and my blood hasn't run dry yet. Why talk about ending? Although he used all his means and only managed a slight disadvantage. Is it really a team fight if both sides pull back after one exchange and no one dies? I see. So that's what you think. Hearing Ichigo's words, Byakuya nodded. I was right. You are indeed the fighting maniac type from the 11th Division. In that case, I shall grant your wish. Under the surprised gazes of Rukia and Renji, and the confused eyes of the live stream audience, Byakuya raised the hilt again and recalled Senbunzakura. The next moment, thousands of cherry blossoms gathered once more, and Senbunzakura's clear blade reappeared. Brother, are you? Rukia couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. Seeing this, Renji was also very surprised. Captain, are you going to use Bankai? Against a mere Kurosaki Ichigo. Bankai. Hearing Renji's words, the live stream audience tensed up again. Is it finally happening? The first captain's Bankai, also the first Bankai we've seen. It was almost embarrassing. The live stream audience had been watching for nearly a month, but from no perspective had they seen anyone use Bankai. And Byakuya was the first to do so. Raising Senbunzakura vertically, Byakuya turned his wrist, using his hand as the axis, letting Senbunzakura fall naturally by gravity. Then, when Senbunzakura was perpendicular to the ground at a 90-degree angle, Byakuya released his grip, and Senbunzakura plunged into the ground. Byakuya spoke faintly, Bankai. The single Senbunzakura completely sank into the ground. Simultaneously, over a dozen massive Senbunzakura blades rose from both sides of the ground. Then, just like Senbunzakura's Shurkai, these massive Senbunzakura blades shattered simultaneously. Instantly, an ocean of cherry blossoms flooded the entire street. Only then did Byakuya utter the name of his Bankai. Senbunzakura Kageyoshi. Countless Senbunzakura petals filled the sky. If the number of blades in Senbunzakura's Shurkai was in the thousands, then the number of Senbunzakura blades now was easily in the hundreds of millions. The Senbunzakura petals swirling everywhere were dreamlike and illusory, like a beautiful scene. It truly lived up to the name of Senbunzakura's Bankai, Senbunzakura Kageyoshi. T/N, Senbunzakura Kageyoshi means vibrant scape of 1,000 cherry blossoms. Since Shurkai wasn't enough to defeat Ichigo, he went straight to Bankai. Byakuya had no thoughts of you use Shurkai, so I'll use Shurkai too. Hey, Kurosaki Ichigo, surrender. Rinji advised from the side. To force the captain to use Bankai with just your Shurkai, although part of it is because Shinigami at lieutenant level and above officially coming to the living world have an 80% power limit. But to force the captain to use Bankai, you can already be proud. It's enough. Hearing Rinji's words, everyone was shocked again. What? Kochiki Byakuya, who was fighting Ichigo with ease and even suppressing him, was only using 20% of his strength? Captain-level strength, is that terrifying? My god, what kind of monsters are these? For the first time, the Earth audience watching the battle gained a preliminary understanding of a captain's strength. After all, they could never have imagined. Among the many Shinigami in the Seriitii, most ordinary Shinigami are unnecessary and unimportant. Because as long as the Seriitii has its 13 captains, as long as Captain Commander Yamamoto is still there, the Seriitii will never fall. However, while the audience didn't know, Ichigo had known all along. Forcing Byakuya to use Bankai here, he had already surpassed the original Ichigo by who knows how much. Indeed, such an achievement was enough to be proud of. But Ichigo was not satisfied. Chapter 54: Severe Injury, The Fixed Path. Just like players in ordinary games, knowing they won't die, they can act recklessly. It's the same here. In the living world, with Kasuke watching and Isshin present, they would never let him be killed no matter what. Because of that, Ichigo could fight to his heart's content in this battle. I told you, I will protect Rukia. That's my promise to her. I won't let you take her away. Roaring, Ichigo frantically squeezed out all the Ryuryoku in his body. Then, channeling Reisher into his blood vessels, completely disregarding whether his body could handle it, his veins bulged, and blood artery was fully activated. The excessively saturated Ryuryoku even caused Ichigo's brown pupils to turn a faint blue under its influence, as if burning with flames. Getsuga Tensho Wrap. Wrapping Getsuga Tensho around Zangetsu once more, Ichigo charged towards Byakuya. His rapidly stepping figure, though without afterimages, could still be said to be extremely fast. But watching Ichigo charge, Byakuya's eyes were indifferent as he said disdainfully, "It seems a cornered beast indeed still fights." He waved his hand, and a torrent of Senbunzakura petals instantly engulfed Ichigo. Ichigo! Seeing this, Rukia's heart clenched. But the next moment, Ichigo's roar was heard. Get away! A ring-shaped Getsuga Tensho exploded, knocking away most of the Senbunzakura petals. Then, frantically swinging Zangetsu, a bleeding Ichigo appeared before everyone. Although Senbunzakura's blades were small, the blood loss from thousands of tiny wounds quickly formed a small pool of blood on the ground beneath Ichigo's feet. Gwa! Ichigo spat out a mouthful of blood. The impact of the Senbunzakura petals also carried force. Just now, he hadn't only suffered external damage. His internal organs were also injured. After Byakuya's Bankai, his strength truly overwhelmed Ichigo. But even in such a miserable state, Ichigo did not give up. Since blood artery's strength boost wasn't enough, he switched to blood venae to stop the bleeding and extend his combat capability as much as possible. Before the next Senbunzakura torrent arrived, Ichigo used Terenkyaku to fly into the sky. Then, the Quincy Cross reappeared. Ichigo set Zangetsu aside and knocked a Getsuya on the bow. Byakuya saw through Ichigo's plan at a glance. "Oh, knowing you can't win head-on, so you're trying to use ranged attacks to whittle me down? Unfortunately, this is also useless." Feeling the battle had gone on a bit long, Byakuya raised his hand. Part of the Senbonzakura ocean swirling around him separated and chased after Ichigo in the sky. Ignoring it, Ichigo shot arrows at Byakuya, but the roaring Getsuya were intercepted by the cherry blossom ocean around him before they could get close. The flying blade swarm approached, and Ichigo used Hirenkyaku again to escape. Using Hirenkyaku's speed, Ichigo transformed into an archer, starting to kite and deal chip damage. Seeing this, Byakuya frowned and raised another hand. In the sky, 2 Senbonzakura swarms began pursuing Ichigo. But with only 2 swarms, Ichigo could still find opportunities to shoot at Byakuya. Seemingly somewhat annoyed, Byakuya raised a single hand without using both. Then, an awe-inspiring scene appeared. Most of the cherry blossoms surrounding Byakuya rose with this single hand gesture. Like the Buddha's 5-finger mountain, a giant cherry blossom hand rose from the ground, grabbing towards Ichigo in the sky. In the sky, Ichigo darted left and right, trying to find an escape route. But this time, Byakuya's control was very focused. The cherry blossom fingers in the sky continuously plugged gaps, sealing off Ichigo's escape routes tightly. Seeing this, Ichigo could only futilely ascend higher into the sky. Below, Senbonzakura pursued relentlessly. For a moment, Ichigo alone led the entire Senbonzakura ocean flying in the sky, forming a marvelous sight. The cherry blossom ocean rising from the earth connected heaven and earth. But even the sky has its limits, and so does human strength. During the pursuit, Ichigo ultimately could not escape Byakuya's 5-finger mountain. Those below could clearly see the soaring Senbonzakura ocean engulf Ichigo. Ah! A piercing scream came from the top of the sky. It was like Gaara's sand coffin, blood sprayed and dripped down. Then, carrying traces of blood, the hundreds of millions of Senbonzakura petals descended, returned, and transformed back into a long sword, returning to Byakuya's hand. In the sky, having lost all strength and nearly bled dry, Ichigo fell vertically. Without a second thought, Rukia rushed forward to catch Ichigo. But she immediately remembered she had no power now and couldn't catch him. So Rukia immediately looked at Renji beside her. Chapter 55. Finally, Byakuya acknowledges Ichigo? Renji, please, help me. Rukia pleaded. TCH. Looking at the tears in Rukia's eyes, Renji gritted his teeth in frustration, but ultimately stepped forward and leaped into the air, catching the falling Ichigo. When he brought Ichigo back to the ground and saw his injuries, both Rukia and Renji were stunned. Because even though Byakuya had recalled Senbonzakura, 2 cherry blossom-colored long swords formed from Senbonzakura petals were still embedded in Ichigo's Seketsu and Hakusui points. Ichigo. Looking at Ichigo's chest, Rukia, who understood perfectly what these 2 locations meant, silently pulled out the 2 long swords. Once the Shinigami Seketsu and Hakusui are destroyed, they would lost all their Shinigami power. Simultaneously, looking at Ichigo's condition, Renji also fell silent. The other party had given his all for Rukia until the very end. What about him? Could he do the same? Renji couldn't answer that at the moment. But under the circumstances, Rukia's matter was certainly concluded. He could only look at Rukia. Has the dream ended? If it has, let's go. Ah! Rukia sighed, as if waking from a dream. Ichigo having his powers destroyed was already the best possible outcome. Indeed, my dream should also end now. Rukia murmured. After saying this, giving Ichigo one last lingering look, Rukia silently stood up and walked towards Byakuya. Watching their reactions, the live stream audience was very confused. What does that mean? What dream ended? It doesn't look like Ichigo's injuries are that severe. Wait, are they really leaving just like that? Ichigo hasn't even said anything yet. Hey, stop. And Ichigo, wake up. Rukia-chan is about to be taken away. And as if truly hearing everyone's calls, Ichigo's fingers slowly began to twitch. Rukia. A hoarse voice emerged. Hearing Ichigo's voice, Rukia, who had just started walking, froze as if struck by lightning, unable to move further. Seeing this, Byakuya said, puzzled. What? His Seketsu and Hakusui have both been destroyed by me. Even if he doesn't die, surviving will mean losing all his Ryuryoku. Are you still expecting him to get up and save you? Hearing Byakuya's explanation, the livestream audience finally understood why Renji and Rukia's expressions were so strange. Holy crap, this Byakuya is ruthless. He crippled Ichigo. True, I was about to say earlier, the places those two swords were stuck were very strange. Ah, so those places are the weak point of Shinigami. Hey, is now the time to be concerned about that? If Ichigo is crippled, doesn't that mean all his strength is gone? It's over. This 14 billion game coin bet has caused a disaster. Many Dongwa people felt terrible about Ichigo's plight. Seeing the complaints in the livestream, the Shigwa people, who had been keeping a low profile for a long time, finally came out to gloat. Ha, serves him right. Ha, your belief in Ichigo backfired, didn't it? Having the entire country bet on him, he got too arrogant. Indeed, such arrogance leads to trouble. Last time you said our betting caused problems, huh? Now you've killed your own player with your own hands. Serves you right. You there, say that one more time. Seeing Ichigo in trouble, many Shigwa people who saw him as a thorn in their side insanely mocked. Facing the Shigwa people, the Dongwa people once again launched a full-scale counterattack. But one undeniable fact was that if Ichigo was crippled, he would make Dongwa a perpetual laughingstock. In the future, whenever mentioned, people would say, "Oh, there was this really powerful guy." What a pity, later the people of his country trusted him too much and used game coins to crush him to death. What a shame. The thought of such a scene made all Dongwa people shudder. On various social media platforms, topics about Ichigo being crippled skyrocketed. For a moment, everyone's focus was on whether Ichigo was truly crippled or not. Therefore, they didn't hear the last words Ichigo said to Rukia. What Ichigo said was, "Rukia, get out of the way." Hearing Ichigo's words, Rukia instinctively dived to the side, simultaneously pulling Renji with her. And Ichigo, lying on the ground, covered in blood, stood up resolutely at that moment. Chapter 56. What? He can still use Ryuryoku? From the start of the battle until now, he hadn't used much of his black Ryatsu, saving it for this moment. The long gestating light was finally about to emerge. Even if only for an instant, it was enough. Ichigo poured everything into it. Zangetsu, sharp as if new, was raised high. On the massive Zangetsu blade, terrifying black Ryatsu began to gather. Kuchiki Byakuya, I told you. You haven't bled yet, and my blood hasn't run dry. How can the battle end? Take my final strike. Getsuga Tensho, he roared with a metallic voice. Unnoticed by anyone, Ichigo's eyes had turned pure yellow, and a faint hollow mask had partially formed on his face as he unleashed the Getsuga Tensho. And this time, the Getsuga Tensho was black, even tinged with a bloody, eerie color. What? He can still use Ryuryoku? Sensing the Ryatsu erupting behind him, Byakuya turned around hastily. Drawing Senbonzakura at the fastest speed of his life, Byakuya raised his sword to block. Boom! The black Getsuga Tensho crashed against the sword. The terrifying force instantly shattered the skin at the base of Byakuya's thumb, forcing him to use his other hand to support the blade. But even with both hands, pressed down by the black Getsuga Tensho, Byakuya was continuously forced back. His feet dug firmly into the ground to dissipate the force, but no matter how much Ryuryoku he used to create footholds, he couldn't stop himself. Finally, the Getsuga Tensho exploded. The suddenly increased impact force actually sent Byakuya flying. His completely out-of-control body spun until it crashed through a wall before stopping. Gwa! The immense force injured his internal organs, forcing Byakuya to spit out a mouthful of blood. You! With the anger of being ambushed, Byakuya raised a single index finger, aiming at the still-standing Ichigo. Hato #. But at that moment, Rukia screamed and stepped between them. No, brother! He can't move anymore. Byakuya looked closely. Only then did he realize that after unleashing the final Gitsuga Tensho, Ichigo had already fallen into a coma, standing with a satisfied smile, propped up by Zangetsu. Seeing this, Byakuya fell silent for a moment and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the crimson blood on his finger and his injured hand, Byakuya sighed, "I see. I have bled, and your blood has run dry. Only then can this battle truly be considered over." Byakuya gazed deeply at Ichigo. "I must admit, human boy, your fangs have indeed touched me. It's just a pity that under the absolute difference in power, all your efforts are in vain." Byakuya sheathed his sword. Simultaneously, withdrawing his gaze from Ichigo, feeling somewhat moved, he looked at Rukia. "If this young man were from the Soul Society, even a resident of the Rokangai, I could overcome the objections of the family elders and let you marry him. But Rukia, unfortunately, he is a human, and you gave him your Shinigami powers. Perhaps, this is fate." "Brother." Hearing Byakuya's words, Rukia found it hard to believe. The always cold and indifferent Byakuya was now comforting her? Seeing Rukia's incredulous expression, Byakuya curled his lip but ultimately said nothing more. "Let's go." Byakuya turned silently. "Abarai, open the gate." "Yes." After a worried glance at Rukia, Renji hurried to open the gate. Zabumaru, wrapped in bandages, pierced the void. Then ripples appeared, and a Japanese-style Senkaman opened. Taking one last look at Ichigo, Rukia entered first, followed by Renji. However, Byakuya paused deliberately before entering. Turning his head, he looked in a certain direction, staring intently for a long time. Finally, after who knows what thoughts passed through his mind, Byakuya let out a faint sigh and then stepped into the Senkaman. The Japanese-style Senkaman closed. After the group had gone far, a black cat jumped out from the direction Byakuya had been looking. My, that Byakuya brat's perception is still so sharp. I almost thought he was going to come arrest me. Under the astonished gazes of the live-stream audience still watching, the black cat spoke. Meanwhile, Kisuk, who had arrived, smiled wryly. "Yaruchi-san, why have you turned into a cat again? Kurosaki-kun is so badly injured, you could at least help me carry him." Unexpectedly, upon hearing Kisuk's complaint, the little black cat became very feisty, directly jumping onto Kisuk's head and delivering a barrage of cat punches. "Screw you, you bastard. Do you want me to transform here?" the black cat said. Alright, my fault. Unable to handle the scratching, Kisuk could only bow and beg for mercy. Chapter 57. Ichigo can still be healed? However, after the commotion, looking at Ichigo, especially his terrifying injuries, Yaruchi showed a trace of worry. "Hey, Kisuk, that Byakuya brat was quite ruthless. Even testing a prospective brother-in-law shouldn't be this harsh. His Hakusui and Saketsu are both shattered. Are you sure this can be fixed?" Hearing Yaruchi's words, the live-stream audience instantly focused. What did that mean? Could Ichigo's cripples really be repaired? Under everyone's expectant gaze, Kisuk didn't keep them in suspense. He pressed down on his hat and directly revealed a confident smile. Of course. Actually, it doesn't even need repairing. After all, what does the fatal Saketsu and Hakusui for Shinigami have to do with the human, Kurosaki Ichigo? Kisuk said with a smile. Hearing his words, the live-stream audience was also shocked. What the hell? Good grief, why don't I understand what's he talking about? It seems that Urahara Kisuk can indeed heal Ichigo. Learning that Ichigo was not in trouble, everyone breathed a huge sigh of relief. Simultaneously, Kisuk's subsequent words continued to surprise them. Looking down at the laid-out Ichigo, Kisuk's eyes were deep. Not only that, this time, Kachiki Byakuya shattering his Saketsu and Hakusui has completely eliminated the residual Ryuryoku from Rukia. Originally, I was puzzled why Kurosaki-kun's strength growth would hit a bottleneck at the quasi-captain level Ryuryoku. It seems now that it was actually Rukia's Ryuryoku blocking his own, which is why he encountered a bottleneck at the mere captain level. I thought that since he could achieve Shirkai, he could use his own Ryatsu. now I realize that wasn't the case. Hearing Urahara's words, Yoruchi was also somewhat surprised. What? So that means, after he recovers, his Ryuryoku level could directly reach captain level? In other words, after Kurosaki Ichigo recovers, he can begin Bankai training? Kisuke nodded, most likely. It depends on whether he can materialize his Zanpakuto. Actually, I think he can. He sighed, Kurosaki-kun's potential is simply the greatest among all the people I've ever seen. Indeed. Looking at Ichigo, Yoruchi also nodded in agreement. Then, the two flickered away with the blood-covered Ichigo. Only the live stream audience remained, heatedly discussing and arguing due to the repeatedly changing situation of the day. Simultaneously, in the live stream, after summarizing today's information, some detectives spotted a key point. Wait, brothers, I noticed a detail. Just now, Urahara Kisuke called that cat Yoruchi. Do you remember Kuchiki Byakuya mentioned the goddess of flash Shihoin Yoruchi who taught him Shuinpa? And from the words of the Yoruchi cat just now, we can also sense that she is very familiar with Kuchiki Byakuya, calling him Byakuya brat. This Yoruchi cat's identity, and the shopkeepers, are not simple. Looking at this person's words, others also reacted. That's true. What does the greatest among all the people I've ever seen mean? To be so confident, doesn't that mean he has truly seen many geniuses? But if that's the case, then Ichigo's identity doesn't seem simple either. Is he really just a simple reincarnation of Shiba Kaien? I feel something's off. Brothers, seriously, even being crippled can be fixed, plus that absurd potential. We can rationally discuss whether Lingfan luckily chose the protagonist role. Ichigo's journey so far is totally that of a protagonist. Hahaha, shocking, is our world actually novels? Alright, enough about the protagonist. What's the big deal? Thus, amidst laughter and chatter, the discussion about Ichigo being the protagonist came to an end. However, although Ichigo was unconscious, his consciousness remained clear. Chapter 58 No Martial Virtue? No, this is called wisdom. Inner world. White smiled and greeted Ichigo. Yo, King. Thanks for the nurturing. What a pity, if I had come out a bit earlier, Rukia definitely wouldn't have been taken away by that Kuchiki Byakuya. Then, White jumped down from the skyscraper. To thank you, King, could you please hand over your body to me? As he spoke, terrifying hollow power condensed into a massive Zangetsu blade on White. Then, White stepped towards Ichigo. However, looking at White, Ichigo completely ignored him. Confirming that his game system worked as long as his consciousness was clear, Ichigo looked at the nearby Old Man Zangetsu. Old Man Zangetsu, could you please suppress him for a while? Of course, Ichigo. Old Man Zangetsu nodded. With a sweep of his trench coat, he enveloped a very unwilling White. But after suppressing the newly emerged White, Old Man Zangetsu, who had agreed readily, then looked at Ichigo, his tone revealing some weakness. Ichigo, although I suppressed him, now is when your power is at its weakest. I cannot suppress him for long. The relationship between the king and the steed lies in taming. Sooner or later, you will need to fight him. Hearing Old Man Zangetsu's words, Ichigo smiled. It's fine, Old Man Zangetsu. Just help me suppress him for a little while is enough. Ichigo only needed a short time anyway. Because his game system was still usable. Opening the game coin shop option, Ichigo thought, game, I need a custom enemy. Make me a White. Faced with a disobedient steed, don't blame Ichigo for having no martial virtue. Spending game coins, Ichigo began the topic of king and steed in advance within the illusory space. And after obtaining these 14 billion game coins, Ichigo's personal Zanpakuto plan was already 1/6 complete. T/N, it seems the author made a mistake. Before, it's written that new Zanpakuto needs 600 billion, but now, just after 14 billion, it's already 1/6, which meant it's just less than 100 billion. Next, he needed to find 5 more such absolutely not lethal opportunities and have others bet game coins on him. But for now. Hahaha, King, let's fight. The system simulated, highly accurate white-spun Zangetsu and charged forward. My power, submit to me properly. Also swinging his blade, Ichigo met him. The sound of clang 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 once again echoed in the constructed space. After a great battle, Ichigo fell asleep directly, happily forging iron in his dreams. But while Ichigo was having a good time, the Soul Society was once again in turmoil because of Rukia's affair. Soul Society. In a player's live stream. Hello everyone, the man before you is called Xiao Shuai. T/N, his name means little handsome. Of course, you don't need to know my real name, just call me Xiao Shuai. Xiao Shuai, wearing a shihakusho, introduced himself to the live stream. Bullet comments flooded the stream. Here he is, here he is. Xiao Shuai is live. The Shuai Shuai army has arrived. Xiao Shuai, he really, even though he can't see the bullet comments inside, he still persists in streaming. So professional. Yes, Xiao Shuai wasn't a streamer who could broadcast from within the game. To be precise, he was a streamer-type player. Because he was a streamer outside, after entering the game, to maintain a work mindset, he kept acting as if he was still streaming. It was a method of self-preservation. After finishing his introduction, Xiao Shuai began his carefully prepared program. Once again, welcome the audience to Xiao Shuai's livestream. Thanks to sponsor XXXXX. Without further ado, let's begin today's Xiao Shuai morning news. And I think, if everyone has been paying attention to other people's streams, you must also know that a major event has occurred in the Soul Society. A Shinigami named Kuchiki Rukia gave her Shinigami powers to a human in the living world and was sentenced for a first-degree felony. However, through the anchor's multifaceted observation, I feel this matter is quite fishy. Because, this Rukia's identity is no simple matter. She is the adopted daughter of the Kuchiki clan, one of the 4 great noble houses. Her brother is the 6th Division's captain, Kuchiki Byakuya. Captain Toshiro Yukitake is also famously a nice guy and a veteran. Toshiro Yukitake and his good friend Kayaraka Shunsui are the Soul Society's dual blades, dual overlords. These 2 veteran captains immediately raised objections to the verdict. However, the Central 46 firmly sentenced her to death. Such an unusual verdict immediately caught the attention of the player groups in the Soul Society. We all speculate that something big is coming. Listening to Xiao Shuai's professional morning news, the live stream audience began to share their views. Chapter 59. This man is called Xiao Shuai. Big refers to Ichigo. Big is coming means Ichigo is coming. Yeah, with Ichigo's stubbornness, he will definitely charge into the Soul Society. I'm not too concerned about charging into the Soul Society, just take out that Londa. Right. This Londa is such a dog. If he hadn't discovered Ichigo's situation, why would Ichigo and Rukia-chan have to separate so early? Not just that, seriously, taking out Londa would be good for everyone, Dongo players. Yeah. True. And take out that Rindu along the way. Speaking of Londa and his followers, everyone gnashed their teeth in anger. Because this person truly implemented the idea that technology is the primary productive force to the extreme. Initially, Londa used his scientific knowledge to get himself promoted, then used surveillance to gradually identify players. After identifying players' nationalities, he would find ways to suppress and harass Dongwa players, while directly allying with Shigwa players. Relying on his reputation and coincidentally having a lieutenant among the Shigwa players, Londa prominently formed a considerable hidden player faction within the Suriidii. But if you think he stopped there, you'd be wrong. Because players are always outsiders who will leave, and only the strength they take with them is their own. In this situation, players who happened to become Shinigami had very few choices. For players, the optimal divisions were the 2nd Division, Stealth Force, 11th Division, Combat, and 13th Division, Living World Purification, followed by the 3rd Division, Support, and the 5th Division, Rescue. After understanding the Soul Society's structure, players who could transfer to the first 3 divisions were trying to do so. Among them, the most desirable was the 13th Division, the most dangerous was the 11th Division, and the moderate one was the 2nd Division. This is where Londa started to operate. Relying on the fact that the 2ND Division's lieutenant was one of theirs, Landa rejected all Donghua players from joining the 2nd Division, while Shigwa players were accepted freely. Simultaneously, since no one had connections in the 13th Division, he used power and status to threaten and block their applications. Using the 12th Division's authority, by simply holding up an application or deliberately messing up some data, Donghua players' transfer requests would most likely not be approved. Thus, the best and second best options were occupied by Shigwa players. Donghua players could only join the 11th Division, where they had some people. The problem was that combat in the 11th Division was perilous, often involving frontline duty. Donghua players in the 11th Division were dying, even though Sister May tried her best to look after them. Fortunately, the 4th Division's captain, Unohana, was very kind, otherwise, injured Donghua players from the 11th Division would also have to deal with the disgusting 4th Division's 4th seat, Wamida's brother, who was also a Shigwa player. Although they couldn't openly attack, Landa's underhanded tactics never stopped. Especially since he had now developed holobait. The already few Donghua players in the 13th Division were also being targeted with high-dose holobait. Every time they saw this, Donghua viewers couldn't help but grit their teeth. Now, Ichigo's impending arrival in the Soul Society finally gave them hope. If the Donghua players in the Suriitii want to have a better time, they really have to rely on Old Faye and Ichigo. Everyone concluded. One had intelligence, the other had power. As long as they joined forces, they would surely make life difficult for Landa. Simultaneously, the Xiaoshui Morning News concluded after once again explaining the current situation of players in the Soul Society. Normally, at this point, many viewers who came just for the morning news would leave. But then, due to one action by Xiaoshui, everyone paused. In the live stream, Xiaoshui pointed at his division's gate and said, "Gentlemen, remember what the 9th Division does?" That's right, the 9th Division is the prison division. Coincidentally, I was lucky enough to be assigned a task. Yes, I think you might have guessed what task it is, right? Correct. As a recently imprisoned prisoner, Kochiki Rukia is right here in our 9th Division. After some introduction, carrying food, Xiaoshui headed towards the 9th Division prison. Rukia, wearing a white kimono with a calm expression, appeared before everyone. The door opened, and Rukia opened her eyes. Oh, is it mealtime already? It's really hard to tell the time in here. You can just leave the food here. I'll eat it. Rukia's familiar appearance and familiar voice reached everyone. Rukia in a white kimono had a unique charm. In the live stream, the many people who came from Ichigo's stream were overjoyed. Chapter 60 Awake. Rukia. Our Rukia. We finally see her again. Woo woo, it's been days, but Queen Rukia is still so calm and composed. I'm really crying. Darn it, Ichigo, wake up quickly. Come save Rukia. Looking at Rukia's serene kneeling figure, Xiaoshui was also very curious about this woman who had single-handedly stirred up the entire Soul Society. Aren't you afraid? That's the Sokayaku execution. Xiaoshui couldn't help but ask. Hearing this, Rukia was taken aback, then the corner of her mouth curved into a breathtakingly beautiful smile. She said this, "I'm not afraid. Because we promised, he will come." Thinking for a moment, facing the curious Xiaoshui, Rukia began to talk about him with a gentle smile. Meanwhile, the Ichigo whom Rukia was gently narrating about had just woken up. Ugh! Letting out a long groan, Ichigo, who had become obsessed with forging iron and still had the clanging sounds echoing in his mind, woke up. Opening his eyes, a wooden ceiling came into view. Judging his location from the ceiling, Ichigo understood, so, I'm at the Urahara shop? Raising his hand, the heavy sensation of a human body returned, he was back in his body. However, Ichigo was a bit curious. He must have slept for quite some time, after all, he has been fighting white for 24 hours in the inner world. After coming out, his physical injuries and mental exhaustion made him sleep again, continuing the forging in his dreams. This back and forth was at least 2 days, so how did Kasuke explain it to his family? Skillfully getting dressed and washing up in the shop, Ichigo then went to the convenience store front that served as a disguise. Yo, Kurosaki-kun is finally awake. I thought you were going to sleep yourself to death. Looking at Ichigo, Kisuke said in surprise. Grabbing the water cup from little Yururu nearby and taking a big gulp, under the little lowly's tearful gaze, Ichigo asked, "Cut the crap. How long did I sleep?" 3 days. Kisuke gave a surprising but not unexpected time. He seemed impressed. I've never seen anyone who can sleep as much as Kurosaki-kun. But thanks to this sleep, it looks like Kurosaki-kun has fully recovered. Of course. My own body is much more nourishing than Rukia's jigai. To be honest, Rukia stayed in that jigai for so long without recovering her Ryuryoku. Could it be that some unscrupulous merchant gave her some counterfeit or shoddy product? As he spoke, a faint smile hung on Ichigo's face, and his brown eyes stared directly at Kisuke. Stared at by these eyes, even though Ichigo had lost his Ryuryoku, Kisuke still felt a faint pressure. Has Kurosaki-kun noticed something? What terrifying observation skills! Kisuke thought to himself, it seems I can't hide it from him for long. Might as well reveal a bit. Kisuke pressed down his hat brim, hiding his eyes and expression in the shadow, and said faintly. Well, who knows? Maybe Rukia-kun herself is just special? Look, isn't everything around her full of impossibilities? You know, abilities like Inoue's and Sato's aren't that easy to awaken. Hearing Kisuke's words, Ichigo secretly curled his lip in disdain. He didn't want to hear that. He wanted to use the point about Rukia's special nature to make Kisuke reveal more good stuff. How could he not know that Rukia had the Hogyoku? But to be honest, having stayed by Rukia's side for so long, he, who should have benefited the most, hadn't received much help from the Hogyoku, and he knew the reason. However, the audience hearing Ichigo and Kisuke's conversation wasn't as calm. Holy crap, sticking by Ichigo's side really pays off. Look what I heard again. What? So the protagonist isn't Ichigo, but Rukia? Yeah, among the 6,000 players, quite a few chose the living world, but very few had opportunities like Ichigo, or were attacked by hollows. I originally thought being attacked by a hollow would awaken abilities, but now it seems you need to be near Rukia. Then hurry up and save Rukia-chan. He's finally awake. Yeah. Time is running out. Amidst the bullet comment discussion, Ichigo also asked about Rukia's situation. However, Kisuke didn't answer immediately. Suddenly, his aura became deep, and Kisuke asked in return, is it necessary to know? That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated and taking over Ichigo's body. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Fusion Deck user in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX will be going on hold soon, since we're nearly at the end of the story. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if Reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if Reincarnated in Marvel as a gamer? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.